In this video, I talk about the differences between good and evil and how it might relate to your gaming. Now, I don't watch as much television as I used to. Actually, these days I watch a lot more YouTube. But I do sometimes try to get into some shows that a lot of people like to talk about. Two shows that a lot of people love, probably you, that just did not grab me are Breaking Bad and Mad Men. And I think for me, one of the reasons that I just never was able to get stuck in and completely finish, the entire season is because in both of those shows, it was almost impossible to find somebody who you liked. Basically everybody, specifically the main characters, were not necessarily good people. And it's not that I'm saying that I want to watch shows that only have good people in them, but if you're going to have bad people, you also want to have good people, in my mind. That's one of the reasons why I don't like a lot of reality TV at all, because in a lot of those types of shows, everybody's a bad guy, because you're kind of seeing them as they are, and they're, pitting them against them and each other and the whole deal, and I just don't have time for that. Now, you're probably saying, but, Adam, why do we care, frankly? And that's a very good question. The answer is because a lot of times, how you perceive the factions in a tabletop wargame are very indicative to whether or not you like the game, whether you stick in with the game, whether you stay with the game or not. I found that with Malifaux, when I was playing it, I didn't see any faction for me that was any much better. There was I'm not saying that I always want to play the good guys. I don't. It's just that when everybody's kind of not particularly good nor evil, I have a hard time sometimes picking my role. I have a hard time saying, okay, well, I'm going to build a force of the bad guys, and then I'm going to build maybe a force of the good guys, and be able to pick and choose depending on what I want to play or who I'm playing against. When everybody's just kind of areas of gray, I find it sort of difficult. I was going to go into a long diatribe about how something like Warhammer 40,000 definitely has very strong good versus evil roles. But honestly, I started thinking about it a lot more. And though the Imperium of Man is supposed to come across as the good guys because they are defending humanity, and all of us watching this are members of humanity, as far as we know. But, we're supposed to really kind of go, yeah, those are the guys we want to win, the humans, because, we're humans. But really, if you start looking at the Imperium, they're kind of fascists, really. If you start kind of sitting down and getting to brass tacks, they're really kind of fascists. If you go back and read some of the Horus Heresy stuff from, say, Warhammer 30,000, roughly that timeline, they didn't used to be that way. But after the Emperor was basically betrayed and mostly killed, then all of a sudden, then everything kind of became fascist. If you're really interested, go back, look at some of that stuff. Let me know what you think about it. It's a great story, and I do enjoy that stuff. And I know that the guys at Games Workshop, when they originally wrote it that way, were trying to make some commentary on the times. I mean, you have to remember that a lot of the stuff that came out of, say, specifically Warhammer 40,000, came out during, from what I understand, kind of Thatcher and post-Thatcher times in England. So, yeah, I think a lot of that stuff probably kind of was being put out there as satire. Old Games Workshop, specifically old 40K, used to have a lot kind of a funnier sort of satirical bent to it. They've dialed that back over the years. It's still there, but it's much more slight. So in that situation, you could definitely pick the good guys, though they're not that great, or the bad guys. And at least for me, specifically, because I like to have those kind of roles be a little bit more defined, I was able to look at it and go, well, when I want to be bad guys, I'll be Chaos Space Marines. When I want to be good guys, I'll be Tau, because they're pretty good, for the greater good. Or maybe, regular Space Marines. I feel like it's a lot more defined even still in fantasy, or nowadays Age of Sigmar. The humans in Age of Sigmar are specifically much better, I think, than the Imperium. And they basically are trying to just, preserve the entire, everything. We're trying to preserve the lifestyle or the ability to live in those types of games. So I kind of get that stronger sort of polar difference between the good guys and the bad guys. And for me, at least, that kind of stuff is important. It's not that I, like I said, need to play the good guys. It's just that if there's a storyline, an overarching kind of lore in the game, I generally find that it's really important that there's definitely defined differences. You may have some factions that are kind of gray or sort of in the middle, but I gotta be honest, more often than not, I don't find myself playing those guys. So it just kind of depends on what the lore is, sometimes on what I play. Obviously, there's also aesthetic values and things like that. For me, honestly, I almost never go, well, I want to play the guys who are best so I can beat my friends. I'm not that kind of competitive person, and that's fine, and other people are, and that's fine. But I'm just saying, for me, it's lore and aesthetics, and a lot of times what really interests me in lore are the defined roles. Now, the trick is, and this is what's kind of interesting, is that our hobby really started in historicals, and it is very difficult in some historical games to really point out who's the bad guy and who's the good guy. So a lot of times in historicals, it's like, well, we got these guys versus these guys, and we know they had battles. That's the thing. We can go back and go, they did fight, you know. So at that point, for me, that's one of the reasons why I've never been as big into normal historicals, because it's very difficult to sit down and say, well, you know, but these guys versus these guys, they both had their reasons, you have to assume. I think because it's something that actually happened sometimes, that's also a little bit of an issue for me, which is one of the reasons why I'm much more interested in something like Conflict 47, which is weird World War II. It's alternate history stuff that didn't actually occur, walking robots and, you know, laser cannons and stuff like that, versus Bolt Action, which is all stuff that did technically kind of happen. So it's totally up to you, just as it's totally up to me what kind of preference it is. But I think it's interesting, and I guess I didn't think of it until just recently, about how I have a tendency to pick stronger roles when I'm picking my factions. And I've played games in the past where it's very difficult to tell who's wrong and who's right, and I've been finding that I don't generally stick with those games or even pick up on them at all if I don't have that sort of laid out for me. Maybe it's, I don't know, maybe I'm a simpleton. I don't think so. I think I just have a preference for the way that I like to have my stories told on the tabletop. So, I don't know. It's interesting, but it's something that I thought I'd bring up because I kind of wanted to start a conversation about it and see what you people thought, because it's a deeper subject, but I think that everybody's got their own opinions about it, and I think that that kind of differentiation between this group versus that group, whether these guys are considered to be particularly good in the story and these guys are going to be particularly bad, and again, these are all predominantly made-up situations and historicals. It's a whole different story, but the differentiation between those things, at least for me, is a big deal and makes me want to be more interested in the game or not. So if you've got some thoughts about it, or if you've never thought about it and now you are thinking about it, let me know in the comments, because I like to read these things and I like to try to answer them within a relatively timely fashion when I can. There's frequently a lot, but I think that as we see more and more games, at least recently, we're starting to see a lot of, this is kind of gray area. You have all these factions, but they're all basically kind of the same, not necessarily in lore or in aesthetics or even in function, but just like, we're not going to say who's wrong and who's right, and that's fine, but for me personally, I like to know which side I'm on when I pick my army.